we will go over everything that's in Chapter 3. I may or may not do it in the order that it's in the book. It's really not that important. Chapter 3, just so you know it, let me move back to here. Chapter 3 is on what's called CSS. Okay? What we did in Chapter 2 was we worked with HTML. What does HTML stand for? Hypertext, markup, language. Okay? That provides the content for your web page. This chapter is on CSS. Do you remember what that stands for? Cascading style sheets. That's the presentation. Okay? That's color. That's font. You know, the size, etc. that you use. So that's what we're concerned with here is appearance. I'm not going to read these, but there's your objectives. There are 3 different ways that you can apply CSS. We're going to look at all 3 of them. All right? After we do that, I'm going to say, okay, these are the 3. This is the one you should use. So I'm expecting that after that, that's the one you're going to use from then on. Everybody cool with that? All right. So they talk, you know, they say this is what CSS is. It's what I just showed you. There have been different versions of CSS over the years. Okay? And they give you an overview of it, and they tell you, why do you want to use it? Well, if I've got a website, if I have a website that has 10 pages on it, there's probably a pretty good chance I want all 10 pages to pretty much look the same, have the same coloring, have the same font size, etc. So I can create a separate file that instead of ending it with .html, we're going to end these with .css. And then I can use or apply that file to all 10 pages. So that's the biggest advantage. You've got more control over your layout. Second is you are separating your style from your structure. If you look at it this way, you know, this sounds like a dumb question, but I'm going to take for granted. Has everybody here seen a 3-legged stool at one time in your life? All right. So if you looked at it, that web design is a 3-legged stool, and one leg, all right, that we looked at so far is HTML, which is your content. Another leg that we're talking about right now is CSS, that's your presentation. And later on, we'll go into the third leg, which is JavaScript, which allows the interactivity in your website. All right. If you've ever gone out to a website and at the bottom of the screen, it says you are the 268th visitor or person to visit this site. That's done with JavaScript. Or if you've ever gone out to a site and it shows you the date and the time. Or you go out to a site and it remembers you and it says, welcome back, Jesse. That's all done through JavaScript. So we'll get into that stuff later. But the idea is, technically, it's very hard if you remove one of the legs from the stool, it's hard for the stool to stand up. Well, it's not exactly like that because you can make a website that has just CSS and just HTML in it, nothing else. If you have a website with just HTML and just CSS, it's called a static website because it doesn't normally change. When the web started, what a lot of people did, have you ever seen, you know, I've got one probably in the office, but have you ever seen where somebody gives you an example of a trifold type of thing? Remember when we came in the first day and you got that thing on, like, it was on sexual harassment or something, and you could fold it, it was in 3 parts? All right. When the web started, what a lot of people did was they took their trifold thing and they made it into a web page. So it now had 3 or 4 pages on it, but it never changed. That's a static website that you could make using only CSS and HTML. That's not how 99.999% of websites are. You need some interactivity. And if I go out to Amazon, Amazon's very smart, whether you notice that or not, that if I go out and I'm looking at a book, okay, especially if I don't buy it, it'll come remind me of that the next time I come out there. And then it'll also say, people who bought this book were also interested in this book. Why are they doing that? Because they want you to buy stuff. Because that's why they're in business, right? All right? That's the interactivity. And there's JavaScript that's used in order to do that. All right. Your HTML document is smaller because it doesn't have the CSS in it. It's easier to maintain a site because all your CSS will be in one place, even if it's used by multiple website pages. All right? That's what they're showing here in the picture. All right. So don't worry about this imported styles right now. We'll talk about, that's basically, it's almost like this, but it's not exactly the same thing. For right now, just pretend this imported styles, just pretend it's not here. All right. But what I'm telling you is there are 3 ways that you can configure CSS. Worst way, medium way, best way. So after we go through this today, once we start working with CSS on a regular basis, you will always, always, always be using external styles. You will never be using inline styles because there's never a reason to do it, and I don't care what anybody says. All right? And there's never really a reason to use embedded. So what's the difference between them, regardless of what's in the book? You ever seen a kid's story? Maybe you read one as a little kid, or maybe you had one read to you, or maybe you've got a kid or a nephew or a niece, where it says, once upon a time, and the O is really big. You know what I'm talking about? All right, I only want to change one letter. I'd use an inline style to do that. Or if I've got a paragraph and I only want one word in the paragraph to be read, I could use an inline style to do that. All right? So this is for an element that's in a web page. This is for just a single page. You actually put the CSS right in your HTML file. All right? But you shouldn't do that. But you can do that. So that's embedded. It's also called internal. The best one is external. So we're going to make another file. That's the big thing. We're going to make another file. All right? All right. Before we go into this, which is the CSS selectors and declarations, we're going to take a break. But before we do it, we're going to do one thing. Okay, so you're all right here, correct? Do you all see that if you look up here, way to the right, you should have a thing. If you put your mouse over it, it says new. Can you see where my mouse is? If you click, what happens? Creates a new file for you. All right? So create that new file, and let's immediately save it. So do a file, save as, all right? And we're going to do something a little bit different in here. I want to teach you things the right way, all right? I mean, I even when I was a kid, I was, for lack of better words, I was a smart ass, all right? It's kind of continued into my adult life, but I remember as a little kid walking up to my teacher, and I don't remember what grade it was, 3rd grade, 4th grade, we learned long division, okay? And we got done learning long division, and they taught us short division. And I went up to the teacher after class and said, why did we ever have to learn long division? I think that was a waste of our time. She thought I had gall for saying that, all right? But she did understand what I was saying. You know, it was like, well, you've got to learn the fundamentals before, etc. And I get all that stuff, all right? Rather than saving our file right here. Is this what your screen looks like right now? Hopefully it is. I want you to go and right mouse click on a blank spot in your screen, and I want you to choose new and folder. So right mouse click in here, choose new, and choose folder. And when you do, it's going to create a new folder, strangely enough named new folder. We want to change the name of that folder to CSS. So that new folder, we want it called CSS. After you've done that, then double click on that folder. And now you'll notice that when you do that, you're in the CSS folder. That's where we want to save our CSS. This book and a lot of books say, you know what, just have them save everything in the same place. Well, why tell people the wrong way to do things so you can later tell them the right way? I don't get that rationale. So we're doing it the right way from the get-go. And we're going to call this, remember, you're best off, you can either click down here where it says normal text file and then find CSS. There it is. Or you can you'll put your double quotes in again. We're going to call this style.css. Style, style.css. Make sure you're in your CSS folder. If you couldn't save it or had a problem, let me know or let me know later. It's not hard to move it. But again, we're doing it the right way. You're learning things the right way from the start. All right? All right, once you've done that, click save. Now there's nothing big in here. We're going to do one thing. Now, just so you know, we're going to do something and then we're going to run our thing again, and guess what? It ain't going to work. Did you hear that? It's not going to work. but we're going to tell it this. This is what I want you to type in. Let me make it nice and big. So we're going to say body. You have to put them between curly braces. You all understand when I say that what curly braces are? Don't use parentheses. Don't use brackets. Use curly braces. All right? And we're going to say here, background, and we'll use blue. Anybody want to guess what that's telling it to do? We're going to want to make our background blue. All right, that's going to make our text a little hard to see because it's black. So we're going to come in here, we're going to type color white. So our text is white, so it'll be white. So if you wanted to do an inverse type of thing, you'd make the background black and you make the text white. Because by default, the background's white and the text is black. All right, so once you've done that, you've got those two things in there, click the save, your disk icon, and go back to the other file. Does everybody have this? Okay, so go back to your index.html file and run it, and it don't work. And it doesn't work because we haven't physically linked those two files together yet. Does that make sense? This file knows nothing about the other file we created, so we've got to add that. Where do we do that? Again, up in our head section. Make sure you do it in the head and not the body. So we use what's called a link tag. All right, link, we have to say rel for the relation equals style sheet. All right, and I'm going to put this on another line, otherwise it's going to scroll off the screen. Everybody hear that? You can keep typing on the same line, or you can do it like I'm doing it and put it on multiple lines. It's fine. href equals css/style.css. Just like that. Now, I'm supposing you called your style and you made a folder called CSS. Everybody hear that? Because if you run it and it doesn't work, that's probably why. Either you called it something else, and notice I called it style, not styles. All right? So if you call yours styles, that's okay. Make sure it's called styles here then. All right? Now I'm going to save it, and please look, I've got to go back. Now notice when I run it. See the difference? All right, there's a big marked difference. My background's now blue, my text is now white. Now if you think, you say, well, I just did that and mine doesn't work, then raise your hand. All right, but it's 8:57, let's come back at 9:10. Okay, I'm gonna just pause the video for right now. I'll leave this up there, but let me pause this. All right, just a couple things because somebody asked this during the break, Tony did, but I just want you to know, on the homework that you're supposed to do, the practice problems at the end of the chapter, like one of them says, using something you created back in this exercise linked to this. And maybe you didn't do that exercise or do it like that. If it says it, just make a link to it. You know, just make your own A tag, that's fine. Some of them say create a new page that does this. If you want, you can create another page, but if you can put everything on the same page, that's also fine. All right, I'm not trying to be picky at all with this stuff. All right, let's talk a little terminology here. This thing right here, this thing, whatever you put outside of the curly braces, that's called a selector. All right, just so you know that. I'm sure it'll make its way onto a test. So that's called the selector. All right, this right here, before the colon, that thing is called a property. Sometimes called a declaration property, but it's a property. This is called a value. All right, it's also shown in your book on page 83. All right, now I do want to mention something because I showed you different than the book did. When you do the background, this is totally legit. You can type in this. Oops. So you can type in either background or background hyphen color. Either one works. Do you notice when I do this how it's color coded and I take the R off? You see how it's not? That's one way you can always tell when you're putting in a property and you're putting it in incorrectly. Now, if I can, I'll just type less. So I'm going to do it like that. All right. Let's make a couple more changes to this file that we have right here. All right. The first thing I want to do is I want to talk to you just for a second about color. There are at least 4 different ways that you can do colors. That's one way. The problem is not every blue is going to show the same on every browser. It might be a little bit different blue. So you can hard code it, and I want to show you right now 3 different ways of hard coding, okay? And I can type them in too, but I'm just going to show it to you here. So instead of saying blue, we could have said #00000 FF. And it wouldn't matter if the F's were capitalized or lowercase. I'm going to explain all this in just a minute. Or we could say RGB 00255. Or we could say RGB 00255, for example, 1. All right? Anybody want to guess what RGB stands for? Red, green, blue. So this is how much red you want, which is nothing, how much green you want, which is nothing, and how much blue you want, that's total saturation. That's as much as you could have. All right? This says, show it to me, but what I can put there is, instead of RGB, it's RGBA. That's how much alpha you want. So in other words, if I wanted it to show, but I wanted it to be only 50% showing and 50% transparent, I could put there 0.5. For now, we're not going to worry about, because we're going to have a later chapter where we're going to go over RGBs. So these are the only 2 that we care about. Okay, for right now. This and this. And you might say, oh, I'm going to use blue. I'm just going to use the word blue. You can do that. All right, but you will see this. And this is called a hexadecimal code. Hex means it's base 16. We're base 10. If I told you all to count to 10, you'd look at me like I had a screw loose, but you could do it. If you count to 10 using hexadecimal, you count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then this is not 10. That is the hexadecimal number 10, which means I want 0 ones and I want 1 16. All right? Now, is it that important that you memorize it? No, not at all. But what I could do, for example, if I go in, first of all, just to show you, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to make it red. So I'm going to say #FF, because that's the amount of red, 0000. Now, if I do this and I come back to here, that should turn red, correct? And it does. So to show you, you can do it that way. That's what I wanted to show you. So if I wanted to make it blue, again, I would say 00FF. All right, now when I come back to here, it's blue again. Same kind of blue we had before. But what I want to show you is, notice if I type in here, hex code blue. All right, and it'll show me this, but if I click on this, www.colorhex.com code, it'll show me a bunch of other blues. Well, maybe this isn't the one, but one of these shows you a bunch of other, there they are. So if I want to use different shades of blue. So in other words, if I use this one, let's take one that's quite a bit different. This looks like it's a lot darker. So I'm going to grab that one, and I'm going to come in here and change it from what it was to this. All right, and then I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to refresh the page. Well, you see a big difference. That's more a navy blue. Now, sometimes it's going to look my way on the screen, and sometimes it does resonate a little differently on the overhead, just so you know that. All right. But while we're doing this, just let's all do this now. Let's make a couple of other changes. First of all, let's use the hex code here. So #0000FF. All right. Let's add a couple of other things. What we get when we show this on screen, we get what's called the default font. So that's whatever font our browser uses unless you tell it otherwise. Well, I'm not sure what font that is, but we're going to change it. All right? And I want to change it to something that I think will definitely show. So let me try this first. Don't type it in until I try it. Make sure it's going to make a major change. So I'm going to say font family, and I'm going to put in here cursive, just so we've got cursive. Yeah. And let's see if that looks a lot different. All right. I think it does. Okay? And what you do when you put in a font family like this is you typically put in at least 3 of them. All right? So I'm going to put in here, next I'm going to say Times New Roman. You'll notice it's in double quotes, and then I'm going to say serif. All right, so go ahead and put all that in, and then we'll take a look at what it means in just a minute. All right? So after you get that done, save, go back to your HTML file and run it. And you should notice that it looks a lot different than it did before. All right, if you look up here, notice it's font dash family. If you have your book with you, if you have your book, some of the CSS properties are shown in the chart that takes up almost all of page 85 in your book. All right? And Colin, for you, just so you can see it, what they show in there, and again, if you go back and you take a look, there they are. Background color, color, font family, font size, etc. All right? Now, are we going to go over each one of these at one time or another? Yes. Right now, to me, it would be a waste of our time to spend an hour just going over every one of these. All right? But I want to go over this one. What this says is it goes in what's called a major to minor order. If you look up on the screen, please, everybody. What it says is, hey, check your machine. If you've got a cursive font available, use that. If you don't have a cursive font available, try to use a Times New Roman. Why do you think that's in double quotes? What do you see in there that's not in here? Blank spaces. So you have to put it in double quotes. And if you can't find cursive and you can't find Times New Roman, virtually every single machine has either what's called a serif font or a sans serif font. We'll talk about those in later chapters. But you'll notice, I'll take your question in a second. I'm going to make one change. I'm going to put the Times New Roman first instead of the cursive. You don't have to do that, but you can. But please look on the screen. See what it looks like? Now I'm going to refresh. If you click the button that's right here, looks kind of like an arrow that's sort of sideways. Now I'm using a different font. All right? That's how easy it is to make major changes using CSS. Question?
Mine didn't do that.
All right, if yours didn't do it, one thing that you want to double check on is you want to make sure that back here you put in this line, you put it in correctly, all right, and you want to make sure you've got a CSS folder and that you call the file style.css and not styles or something else. You want to make sure you've got all that in there. And if you say, I put it in correctly, I did it correctly, it's in the correct folder, then I'd have to take a look at it. All right? And again, we don't care right now. We don't care that this is going to look ugly as we change colors and stuff. We're working on understanding the different CSS that we can use. All right?
No, it still didn't work.
It could mean there's a problem someplace else in the document. The other thing too is, always make sure that when you make a change to either, show you a little trick here, not that it's a big thing, but if you look up on the screen, let's suppose that we just went in and we made a bunch of changes to our HTML file, and we made a bunch of changes to our CSS file. So we made changes to both. You can go in, and instead of clicking the disk icon right here, if you click the one next to it, it'll save both files. All right? So if you've got any file that you've got open that's been written to, it'll save it. All right? Okay, anything that we've gone over so far that doesn't make sense. So let's take a look at just a couple more of these. All right? This is going to look really stupid, but let's say that what we want is, let's see. I want to look at what we have in our file here. So we've got what? We've got some paragraphs. Okay, we got a lot of paragraphs. Okay, let's say that we want all of our paragraphs to be bold. You with me? We want all the paragraphs to be bold. All right, kind of a stupid thing to want, but that's what we want. We have to say P, remember P is paragraph, right? Just P, not padding, P, and we say here, font, weight, bold. Just like that. Now, I'm not going to save on purpose. I'm going to say P, font, weight, bold. All right? Notice that here, my disk icon is not grayed out anymore. It's saying that I've made changes. Look on the screen, please. And now I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to make a quick change. I'm going to remove this, put it back again. So now I got two files that have both been changed. But it doesn't matter which one I'm on. I'm going to click my double disk icon here, the save all. All right, well, now because I've got a garbage file in here. But now it has saved both of them, just so you see that. All right, I'm going to run this again. And hopefully, it's kind of hard to tell, but these paragraphs are all bolded. You should be able to tell it much easier on your machine than you can up here. All right, so that was font weight bold. Why did we do this? Why didn't we put it under the body? Why did we put a P there?
So it doesn't affect the lists.
Yeah, so because all we wanted to affect, you listening? All we wanted to affect were paragraphs. Does that make sense? All right. Now let's suppose that one of these paragraphs that's in here, one of these paragraphs, we'll pick the last one. All right, the last one that I put in here. That's the footer. I don't want that one. So let's say that this one here, and it doesn't matter. You can pick any one you want. All right, so pick a paragraph and look on the screen here. Type in ID, and we'll call it bolded. Kind of a dumb name, but we're going to say that. We're going to give this what's called an ID. All right, what's an ID? It's an identifier. ID for identification. And we're going to call it bolded. Now, if we run this, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. We haven't changed anything in our CSS. So if you've got P, ID equal bolded, if you put that into one of your paragraphs, save it, go back to your CSS, and instead of saying this, P, change this to hashtag or # bolded. Now we're saying anything with an ID of bolded, make it bold. Does that make sense? So I'm going to save that. And now if I go back and I run my HTML file, only that last paragraph is bolded. The other ones are not. IDs have to be unique on a web page. Did you hear what I said? Don't call something else ID. I'm sorry. Don't call something else bolded. Just call one thing bolded. All right? But what if you look up on the screen here, what if what I want, well, I don't want just this paragraph to be bolded. I want this block quote to be bolded too. Are you with me? I want both of them to be bolded. Then I don't use what's called an ID. I use what's called a class. So I'm going to say here, class equal bolded. And I'm going to change this from ID to class. All right, now I have to make a change to my CSS, so don't run it yet. So I'm going to save this. So for both the block quote and the paragraph, I said class equal bolded. Everybody see that? Now I have to go into my CSS, and instead of using a #, I use a period. You can have as many classes, and classes can affect as many things as you want on a page. IDs affect only one thing, classes can affect multiple things. So I'm saying anything that has a class of bolded, make it bold. So now what I should find when I run this is both my block quote is bold and the paragraph below it is bold, and nothing else is. You see the difference between them? An ID is just for one thing on a web page. A class can be for as many things on a web page as you want them to be. This is one of the most fundamental concepts in CSS, is to be able to tell the difference between an ID, all right, to be able to tell the difference between an ID and a class. It sounds simple, but you'd be amazed how many people screw it up. All right. Let's look at just a couple more things that are in here. We won't go through all of them, but we'll look at a couple of them. All right. Let's see. All right. Would you agree when you look at this that earlier, someplace in here, I think at least, if I don't have it, we're going to make one right now. In fact, let's just make one. Let's come back into our thing right here. I'm going to put a brand new first paragraph in here. Right underneath these elements, I'm going to put a brand new first paragraph in here. And it'll say, and it's going to say, go to I'm putting this on 2 lines because I'm running out of room. Let's make sure I did it right first. We should have a thing in here that says go to Rankin Technical College. Let's make sure. So I'm going to, whoops, I didn't want to run it in Firefox. I want to run it in Chrome. Go to. And guess what? It's here, but it's blue on a blue background. That's why you can't see it. Yes, I'm going to go back, but I want you to see this. What we want to do. All right, I'm going to change my background color, otherwise you're not going to be able to see it. So I don't want this even open. All right, so I will come right back to this, but I'm going to change my background color. So instead of making it blue, I'm going to make it white again. So I'll just put white. It already should be by default, but I'm going to just keep it white for a minute. And then I'm going to run this. Do you all agree now? Well, now I have white text on a white background. So that's stupid. All right. So we'll make the color black. We'll make it back so it's all back to the defaults. What I'm getting to is look on the screen. Do you agree we've got a hyperlink there that says go to Rankin Technical College? All right. Our boss has determined that's fine, but Matt, you know what? We want that Rankin Technical College. We don't want it to be underlined. You with me? We don't want it to be underlined. We still want it to be blue like this when you put your mouse over it, but we don't want it to be underlined. So we're going to change that next. All right. Now, a couple of you were still typing, so that's what you need to put in for that paragraph. All right. And I hopefully you all agree with me, that's an A tag. Remember we talked about this earlier? It's an anchor tag. So we're going to tell the system all anchor tags we want to not be underlined. All of them. We don't have to give this a class. We don't have to give it an ID. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the CSS and I'm going to tell the system, okay, for all anchor tags which are an A, all right, I want to use what's called text decoration none. Again, I'll come right back to it. Let me make sure it worked and I did it correctly. See that? What's not there anymore? The underline. I can still put my mouse on it. It's still a hyperlink. But it's not underlined anymore. So the CSS to do that was right there. And again, I'm not running over everything. I'm not running over everything. that was here. I'm just running over some of it. All right? Anybody have any problems with anything that we're doing so far? All right. Now, again, we have this mythical boss, and our mythical boss has come in and said, you know what? On here, I want just the H2 and just the H3. I want those right there. I want those to be in uppercase. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, we could go back and manually change them. I don't want to do that. And you don't have to. Okay? So what I'm going to tell it is, now there's two ways I can do this. Please don't type this in, but watch. I could say, okay, all H2 tags, I want to do what's called a text transform. And I want it to be an upper, I think it's just uppercase, like that. First of all, let me double check and make sure it worked. Now my H2, see how it's an uppercase? All right, so I could go back now, if I wanted to, I could go back and say, okay, now I've done that one, so let's also do it. So let's do it for H2s, and let's do it for H3s, and let's do it for H4s. And that's totally legit to do that. Okay? I come back here and I run it and I refresh. Now notice my H2, H3, and H4 in uppercase. That's too much work. All right? That's a lot of repetition. There's no reason to ever do that. So what I do is I come down here, I get rid of these, and I say H2, comma, H3, comma, H4. So you can put that in right now if you would. Make sure you save, go back, and I'll come right back to it, so don't worry, and run it. And now your H2, your H3, and your H4 should be uppercase. And you probably have guessed there's also a lowercase. And there might be a title case, I don't remember, which just does the first letter. Yes?
What if it's a big code and you have like a whole bunch of H2s like in different spots?
Okay, that's a great question. The question was, what if there's, what if you got H2s all over? And I don't know if this is what you're saying, but what if you only want to change some of them? Then those H2s you want to change, if there's more than one, you give them each the same class. You make this a class. Okay? Instead of using H2, H3, and H4, you give it a class. So you'd say dot, maybe dot upper. And then you'd say class equal upper on each one of those. If there was only one, you'd make it an ID with a hashtag. And you'd say ID equal upper. All right? One thing, if you look on the screen here, bolded except for, that's not a bad name. Don't ever do this. Look on the screen, please. Don't ever come through here. Let's say I wanted to make this red. So let's say that instead of this, I wanted the color to be red. Don't make a class that's called red. And the reason for that is there's a good chance that somewhere along the line, somebody's going to want to change that color. And you might not change the CSS. Now somebody who looks at your code is going to see it says class equal red, but it's green. What the hell did you do that for? And believe me, it happens. If you look through enough HTML and CSS, people have done that all over the place. All right? So again, we've said all of our hyperlinks, get rid of the underline, and only for our H2, H3, and H4 tags, make them uppercase. And again, just so you see this, if I change this from uppercase to lowercase, went back and looked at this again, you'll notice that now the H2, H3, and H4 are all lowercase. All right? And again, I don't remember, I'm sorry, I don't, if there's one that's called title case or not. All right? But we'll see. And now just the first letters of each one are uppercase. So those are the three ways that you can do that. All right? And you're not turning this in. This is meant for you. This is play, for lack of better words. All right? Now, there's other ones that are on there on page 85 in the book, but I'm not going to go through those. All right? Now, again, going back to the book for a minute, just so you see this. On the bottom of page 85 and going on to page 86, there's your talk about hexadecimal. All right? I'm not going to go through that any more than I already have. They do mention, please look at this either on the screen or in your book. So this is page 86 in the book and page 104 in the PDF. There are 216 Websafe Colors. that you can use. All right? And what that means is if you've got a really, really old monitor, so if you've got a standalone monitor that you're using, those 216 colors can be used on any machine there is. All, you know, and notice it says here also at. So let's go to this website here. And it's in your book, so you don't have to worry about it. There's your Websafe color chart. So those should show pretty much and look like that on any machine. All right. You've also got certain words, and it's not just red, green, blue, black. There's things in there like goldenrod, and there's a bunch of, so there's words that you can use too. All right. Some people like using words whenever possible because if the word is supported, because it makes your code more self-documenting. Other people don't like that. They want to use color codes because they can get the exact color they want. So notice here FF0099. So if I come in here and grab that, this is going to look really ugly. But if I come through here and I go back to my color here and I change it from black to this and I go back, okay? So you see how you can make major changes. All right. It was always great. I'm going to tell you this. You might smile, and I know many people when I say St. Louis Rams, LA Rams, they make faces at me. But where I used to work, we were 90 miles from Milwaukee and 90 miles from Chicago. So you had half the people there who were Bear fans, and half the people who were Packer fans. This is my own opinion. I shouldn't talk like this because I'm being taped. But to me, the word I equate with Bear fans is asshole. Okay? That's just the way I feel, all right? I even said that in class. I had a lot of people making faces at me and whatever. But when I did it in class, I would always use green and gold just to tick off those Bear fans. But I would always tell the Bear fans, you can make yours blue and orange, which are stupid colors anyway. But if you want to do that, you can, all right? When you're doing this, if you are doing a practice exercise, unless it specifically tells you to use a certain font or a certain color, go nuts with it. If that's the way for you to learn, and you're a visual learner, then do that. Don't do what I did before, like right now, don't make the background this color. I don't find that funny when I have to change stuff on your assignments to make them work. You understand what I'm saying? All right. I mean, I can get a good laugh as well as anybody else, but that's not funny as far as I'm concerned. All right. So they talk all about colors on 86 and 87. All right. Now I'm going to show you something. Now we're going to go back and do this. In here, we're going to come in and where it says go to Rankin, I'm going to change this to once upon a time, go to Rankin, which looks stupid, all right? But I've just added there once upon a time. Why? I'm going to show you in a minute. But I've changed this so it now says once upon a time, go to Rankin College, okay? Rankin Technical College. I'm going to get rid of these H tags. You don't have to, but I'm going to get rid of them because right now they're just in the way, okay? And you may or may not remember this, but we talked before, if you want to comment stuff out, it's a less than sign, an exclamation point, minus, minus, and to comment it back in, it's a minus, minus, greater than sign. All right, so now if I do all that stuff and I run this again, you'll notice that those H tags aren't there anymore. I just did that so we can see what we're working on. That's all. All right. So what I want to do is I want that O in the word once, I want that to be real big. Are you with me? That's what I want. But I don't want to change anything else. So what I literally could do if I wanted to is I could make a class, but I'm only changing a letter. So I'm going to show you the style attribute, which is one you typically will never use. Did you hear that? You will typically never use this. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type. Don't type what I'm typing in until I test it and make sure I put it in correctly. All right? I can screw up as well as any of you can. Believe me, and I will. So I want to just change that O. Okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say span style equal font size 3M, the O for once, and then span. All right. Now, did this work? You're going to know right away when you take a look at it. All right, so run. See my O? All right, so I'll put it back so you can do the same thing. You don't have to say once, but again, it's just done so often in little kids' books and stuff. But go ahead and put in something like that. Just do a word or a letter or something so you can see that. I want you to get experience looking at the span tag, all right, which is what this is. And if you do it and it doesn't work, as always, double check and make sure you typed it in correctly. So most of the period today is going to be a lecture like this. We're going through everything. Most of tomorrow is lab. I'd rather give you all the lecture in one day like this and then give you a whole day to practice. As opposed, sometimes people say, why don't you just talk half the period and let us practice, and then half the period and practice. Then those same people come up to me later and say, you know, why did you talk so much? Well, you know, you can't have it both ways. All right.
Can you scroll over real quick?
Scroll up.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
So what is this saying? You may or may not remember this from yesterday, but one thing we talked about was on the bottom of a page was the word div. Div is short for division. It's a way to break up a document. Span does not break up a document. This doesn't break up anything. This says, I want you to span or just cover just that. Does that make sense? All right. This is new. And people look at that and they go, 3M, what the heck does that mean? M is literally how much space it costs, or it uses on the screen to put in a letter M. That's what it is. All right? 3M says, I want it to be 3 times that height. See what I'm saying? All right? If we wanted it to look exactly like this, we could also, you don't have to do this, but we could have put in 48p, oh, not like that. We could have put in here, instead of 3M, we could have put in 48px. And notice, when I go and refresh this, tell me if it changes or not. Did it? No. Now, there's a difference between these, though. All right? I want you to get used to using M's and not PX. PX is pixels. That's a fixed size on every computer. But remember, we want to start creating websites that can be used on phones, on tablets, on laptops, on desktops, and even on super projector units. So we're using M's because an M is what's called a relative unit. It'll scale itself based on whatever kind of media you're using. All right? So that's why we want to use that. And you want to go a little nuts with it. Just as an example, make it 10. It's going to look really weird, I suppose, but pretty obvious what's happening as you're doing that. That's the equivalent of 160 pixels. That's pretty darn big. But sometimes you do want to do things for effect. All right? I'm going to show you one more thing with that. I'll go right back to the code now. I'm going to change this back to 3. All right? Now, let's say that for Rankin Technical College, let's say just the word Rankin. If you don't know this, Rankin's color is red. 2 of you have your Rankin red shirts on today, all right? But I'm going to come through here, and I'm going to grab what I put here, okay? And I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to put the technical college on the next line. But instead of saying font size, you already know what this is. I'm going to say color red. And I want to end my span. Let's see if it worked. See how Rankin's in red? So if you do decide, if there's a reason, and I'll leave that up there for a minute, if there's a reason that you want to use a span tag, that's done just for a word or maybe a sentence or a letter or a whatever. Does that make sense? All right. This is highly discouraged. Everyone says you shouldn't use band tags really ever. You should get used to just making IDs in classes. All right? But there are some people who still use them, and also what you're going to find is they are out there. There are billions of lines. Sound like Carl Sager. You probably never heard of him, but he used to have a show on where he'd say billions and billions, because there are billions and billions of lines of web code out there. So you're going to find it there. Yes.
Could you make the hyperlink red?
The question is, can you make the hyperlink red? The answer is yes, but you don't do it. You don't do it with a span tag. All right. What you do it with is there are what are called pseudo classes that we're going to get into. Not only that, there's 4 of them. You can make it one color when you hover over it, another color when you click it, another color when you click it and let go, and another color when it's been clicked. So you can do that. By default, if you don't remember, they're blue, right? And when you click them, they go to purple. Those are just the default colors. You can change those if you want to. All right, it's not a problem. We're gonna go over all that stuff very shortly, really. All right. So that's one way. So again, this was the span. What if I decide? What if I've got 5 pages right now? I've got index, but let's just say I have index and I have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5. You with me? All right, so I have that. And I decide that just for this page, just the page I'm on right here, I want just this page to be yellow for the background. Don't ask me why, but I just do. All right, so then I can come in here and I can use the second type of these things, which is a style tag. And that says just apply this to stuff on this page. So I'm going to say background, we'll make it green, and we'll say color, and we'll make that gold. All right, I can have my Packer fix. So now when I come in here, notice when I run it, it didn't change. Why didn't it change? This shouldn't actually matter. Well, we'll take that one and we'll comment it out anyway just to see if that was the problem. Background green. And it's not working. So there's something here that it doesn't like. I don't think I have to comment that out.
Don't you have to put it in the CSS order?
No, yes, it has to be inside the head section. No. The question was, this is meant to override anything that was in our CSS file. All right? Style, let's see. What am I forgetting here? Oh, I know what it is. I have to say, okay, the body should have a background. It doesn't know how to apply this. Let's see if that fixed it. Don't like the fact that's not colored, but we'll see. There's my green and gold. So if you want something to apply only to a web page, if you've got a website that's multiple pages and you only want to apply this to one page on the site, you can use style tags. Everybody hear that? This is discouraged. We are mixing or putting CSS into our HTML file. That's highly discouraged. But still, this right here, this is better than this. That's the most discouraged one. All right? That said, it's like every single time, I don't know if I told you, but my wife lives 350 miles away. We're trying to sell our house in Illinois. But when I go visit her, and I go and I get into Illinois and the speed limit's 70. How many people go 70? That would be none. Very few people go 80. All right, they're usually going more than that. So the point is, this, even though you shouldn't do this, that doesn't mean people don't do it. You will find so many sites out there where people have used span tags where they shouldn't to put in some inline CSS, or they've used style tags to put in some internal. The thing to remember about this, all right, is the best way to do it is an external style, which is another file. The second best way to do it is an internal style, which is style tags. The worst way to do it is inline using span tags. Did you notice too? It's like, wait a minute. I put this style in here, but I also had that link in here. Why did it do this when I told it to do this? It's because that's how cascading works. It does span stuff first, because that's the most minor stuff. Then it does style stuff second. Then it does external stuff last. So it cascades. That's how it got its name. All right. Now I'm going through a lot of the stuff that's in the book, virtually all of it. And I'm up to about page 91 in the book. But what I wanted to show you from there on that page. So what they go through here next is they talk about inline, style, which is what I just showed you. But if you look on the bottom in your book on the bottom of page 91, and here, I don't even know if it's in here, if it's on the PDF or not, but they say in here, my CSS doesn't work, what can I do? And they give you some bullets on the bottom of 91 and the top of 92. It's common sense. Make sure you've saved your file. Make sure you type something in into the computer correctly. It's all things, because a lot of times you're in a hurry to get something done. I will tell you especially, I'm going to try, I really mean this, I'm going to try to write your first test that you will take Friday, your first hands-on test, so that you can do it in no more than an hour to an hour and a half. Why? Because I want you to take about the same amount of time and check it. Because what you're going to do, because it's human nature, you're going to and you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. We all do it. All right? But the idea is take your time when you're doing it. You should have plenty of time to work on it. All right? Much easier if you do it right the first time. All right, that's easy for you to say, Jeff. Yeah, it is. All right. In your book on page 92, they talk about the font family. And on the top of page 93, I guess that maybe that's it. I went too far. So, let's see, 3.3. Come on. And this says 3.4. It jumped way too fast. No, I'm not sure what it's doing here. So let me just jump down to here. Embedded CSS with a style element, section 3.4. I know it's backwards, but what that is what we already went over. I had you do this from the start. I had you do some external, and now we looked at the style element. So we've done that. All right, they've got tons of examples in the book. They go back and in the practice exercise, if this isn't making sense to you, this is what I'm telling you now, this is not assigned, but if this doesn't make sense to you, do the practice exercises in the chapter. If you do this, notice what they're doing. They're changing the color of their H1, they're changing the color of their H2s, they're changing the background color, they're changing the color of their text. See that? That's a great way to learn. There just isn't enough time in 40 days for us to do every one of these practice exercises. All right, the only way we do that is if I would lecture 100% of the time. Then you have no time to work on it. I don't think that's a good way for you to learn. There's my CSS doesn't work, so it's Colin, it's on page 110 there, or 112 of there. All right. Configuring text with CSS. Again, the font family I've talked about. There, this is what I wanted to show you. Can you all read that okay? I know that the resolution in this room isn't as good as it is in the next room, because whoever put this projector up screwed it up, but they can't move it because of the way it's bolted into the wall. They'd have to literally put it on a different wall. I don't think Colin and I don't think you guys want it over there. So you're constantly turning around. They asked me, should I put it over there? And I said, no, hell no. And I asked Ryan too, and Ryan's we have to put up with it. So it's a little bit, especially the farther back you go, it might look a little bit out of focus. We can't get it any better than that. Believe me, we've worked on it. But they explain serif and sans serif. They show you cursive. All right? I don't think we have a cursive font on here because it should have looked more like this. All right, maybe we do, maybe I don't really care. Not only that, I don't know if you've heard of this, but please look up on the screen here. Google now has Google Fonts, which you may have already looked at. Google has, last time I looked, it's 841 different fonts. You can put those into your website. So let's say you start looking through this and you're like, I don't see anything I like. Oh, this is cool. So you click over here on this plus sign, and it says that when you do that, it's always a big P, there it is. What you have to do is you have to add that link statement, and then you have to add that in your CSS. So if I wanted to use that, all I'd have to do would be to add this. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to throw that right into my file. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing it to you. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to put it right under the one I've got. So there it is. It's kind of big, but just so you see it, it's right from their site. Then I'm going to go and say font family, and I'm going to have this. All right? And now I want to come in my CSS where I said font family, I want to change it from that to this. All right? And it's using an Oswald font. That's what they just added. So I come back here. Look, you may or may not be able to tell, but it looks pretty different. The key thing, though, is if you want to use Google Fonts, you can add them, but you have to make sure to bring in that link file, and you have to make sure to change your CSS like they show you. And you can use multiple Google Fonts. All right? Some of them work really well together. All right? You can look that up on your own. All right. I'm going to go for 5 more minutes, and we'll take another break. More font properties here. They show you some more font properties. And there's, for example, there's font size. There's a bunch of other stuff. Here, if you look at this table, that should look familiar to you. What did I tell you to use? M's. What did I tell you not to use? Pixels. All right? Pixels and points, both of these are fixed font size. M's and percentages are both relative font sizes. All right? Percentages can get a little quirky, especially when you're using it on different types of devices. So usually you use M's, but you don't have to. All right, so that's page 95 in the book. They also talk in there about font weight, which I've already shown you. I showed you, I didn't go over font style, but that's another way that you can add italicizing. Line height, let's do that one. All right, just so you see it. So I'm going to say here, remember earlier we did this. We did something, I think. We'll use our A tags. That's fine. I'm going to say here for my A tag, I'm going to say line height. We'll try a percentage, just so you see it. Line height 200%. Okay? Now I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to refresh. See where it says Rankin Technical College? And why didn't it change? I don't know if you really use line height with that, but... What's that? Oh, that may have been what it was. Let's see. Nope. Try it with them, see if that works. All right. It doesn't. But if we do come in, instead of putting the line height like this, I'm going to put the line height in for everything that's bolded. I'm going to try that. There are certain properties, and you'll learn this real fast, that you don't use often. I don't use line height very often. All right? Let's see if that worked. All right? And you say it didn't work. Yes, it did. And actually, it worked the first time. It's the height of the line, not the text in it. You see how there's more room here? That's line height. If I wanted to make the text bigger, it was font size. So it actually worked when I did it for here. It gave us more room there. So line height is just that. All right. How about this one? Just so you see it. I'm gonna come in and do 2 different things here. Bless you. I'm gonna say that I want my A tags. This is gonna look really stupid, but I want not my A tag. How about my H2? Well, we used H2, H3, and H4. Let's say we want the H1 tags. Okay, we want those to be text aligned to the right. So we want them to be right justified. And our H5 tag, we want that to be center justified. All right, so let's look at this. And remember, it's the H1, which of course I commented out. So let's uncomment it. Just remove these. So if I did it right, it's the H1 and the H5 that should change. There's our H1 that's now right aligned. There's our H5 that's now center aligned. All right, you can do that with any kind of text you want. There's also a way, just so you know this, I'm gonna change this just because I want you to see it. See this paragraph here that says now is the time? Everybody see that? All right, I'm gonna go back to that in here. You don't have to do this, but I'm gonna go and I'm gonna add it again a bunch more times. All right, why did I do that? Well, I'm gonna show you in a minute, but if we look at this, would you agree there's a bunch more of it? Would you agree with that? So I'm gonna come back there with that paragraph. In fact, I'm going to go to that paragraph because I know how to do this now, and I'm going to put an ID there. And I'm going to say ID equals, and I'm going to call it justified. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing it to you. And then my CSS, I'm going to say dot justified, and I'm going to say text align justify. Now, you might think it didn't change. Notice how these aren't all lined up with one another. I'm going to refresh. Come on, don't make me a liar. It might be justified and not justify. So let's check and see if that fixed it. And of course it didn't. That is how you do it, though. It's text.
Shouldn't it be a number sign instead of a period?
Good point if I said ID. Good catch. You know, when I started as a teacher, I had to take this class, and they said, occasionally, make mistakes on purpose because to see if your students are listening or not. Never had that problem. Always make plenty on my own. All right. So that was very good catch. It said ID equal justified, so this should have had a pound sign. And we'll see now if it's justified or justify. All right, so they're not all lined up. They still are not lined up, so let's try it to just justify instead of justified. And you can maybe tell, maybe not, they all line up now. Made it a lot harder than it had to be, but just so you see that. So they have more properties on pages 94, 95, 96, 97. We've actually talked about a lot of these, but not about all of them. All right? Last thing I want to mention, we are taking a break, but on page 97, they talk about the text shadow property. I'm going to quickly put that into this paragraph that we've done right here. It's going to probably look very strange, but we're going to try it anyway. Again, I don't even know if it's going to work because of the coloring and stuff I'm using, but I'm going to try it anyway. So we have something else we do before we take a break. So text dash shadow. This is directly from page 97 in the book. Text shadow. And here we are using pixels. 3 pixels, 2 pixels, 5 pixels, and pound 666 is what it looks like. All right, let's see if this changes the way it looks. It looks like that. Now let's refresh. And again, it's probably the color, but it puts shadowing in. I think it's because of the color I'm using. That's why it's not showing. We're going to get into a bunch of this stuff. So let's take a break, and we're going to pick it up on the bottom of page 97, set default properties for a page. We'll pick it up. It's 10:07. Let's come back, please, at 10:20.